Welcome. Today we're opening up an analysis of the extraordinary, often baffling, and just completely enduring universe created by David Keith Lynch.
One of the most singular American artists of the last 50 years, without a doubt.
And the sources we have detail his life, from his birth in 1946 right up to his passing in 2025. And he wasn't just a filmmaker.
Not even close. He was a painter, a visual artist, a musician, an author.
And an occasional actor. His career spanned 5 whole decades, and his surrealist sensibility was so distinct it basically carved out its own adjective.
Lynchian.
Exactly.
Lynchian.
And that adjective is really the key. It's the metric of his influence. Our material shows a career that just consistently broke down the walls between avant-garde art and, populist entertainment.
He got global recognition for it, the Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement in 2006.
An Academy Honorary Award in 2019. And then posthumously in 2025, the Laurel Award for Screenwriting Achievement. His work just refused to be put in a box.
It moved between body horror, neo-noir, thriller, and just pure experimental art. All of it held together by this style that somehow blended abstract surrealism with really recognizable American genres.
So our mission today is to go beyond just the filmography, beyond the simple timeline. We're here to interpret how the source material connects his early life, his philosophy, and his artistic methods into this coherent, if deeply strange, body of work.
We want to understand not just what he made, but how he defined reality for a whole generation of viewers.
And to really get a handle on that Lynchian aesthetic, this uncomfortable mix of the totally macabre and the totally mundane, we have to start with his childhood. A childhood that he himself described, paradoxically, as a perfect world.
It's such a crucial starting point. He was born in Missoula, Montana, but his family was always on the move because his father was a research scientist for the USDA.
So he grew up in all these seemingly idyllic American towns: Sandpoint, Idaho; Spokane, Washington;
Durham, North Carolina; Boise, Idaho; Alexandria, Virginia. And when he talked about it, he'd mention these elegant homes, tree-lined streets, blue skies, and this is key: picket fences.
It's the absolute vision of pristine, post-war middle America, exactly how it was supposed to look.
But that perfect, clean surface was always, for Lynch, contrasted with this dark, often violent undercurrent, and that duality became the engine for everything he made later.
The sources give us this really powerful quote that just crystallizes it. It's an observation he made as a child.
Right. He saw, and I'm quoting here, on the cherry tree there's this pitch oozing out, some black, some yellow, and millions of red ants crawling all over it.
That image is it's everything. The beautiful, perfect fruit tree, a symbol of safety and home,
is simultaneously infested. It's concealing decay and this teeming, crawling life that just violates the perfection of the surface.
He realized that if you just look a little closer at this beautiful world, there are always red ants. Whether they're literal or symbolic, they're always there under the varnish.
And while he's having these internal realizations, externally, he's performing this perfect American adolescence.
And he became an Eagle Scout, the highest rank in the Boy Scouts.
Which the sources point out was motivated more by a desire for completion than any real commitment. He admitted he joined simply so I could quit and put it behind me.
That says so much. That tension is already there, mastering the appearance of normal, while inside you're just looking for the exit to something more real.
Or more raw, yeah.
And his pivot towards the art life, as he called it, was really fueled by a couple of specific influences.
He was very affected by a painter named Bushnell Keeler, who was the father of his friend Toby, and Keeler introduced him to this book, The Art Spirit by Robert Henry, which Lynch said was a revelation.
And encouraged this focus on raw feeling, on honest expression.
And that drove him toward art school. He started at the Corcoran School in Washington, D.C., then did a year at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, but he got disillusioned there pretty quickly.
He found it uninspired, which led to this almost comical attempt to just leave America entirely.
He and his friend Jack Fisk decided they were going to Europe. They wanted to train under the Austrian expressionist painter Oskar Kokoschka.
But the trip was famously a disaster.
A total bust. They get to Salzburg, find out Kokoschka isn't even available, and the disillusionment was so immediate they turned around and came back to the States after just 2 weeks.
The dream of the perfect artistic pilgrimage was another broken promise.
Exactly, and it was when he got back, when he moved to Philadelphia to enroll at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, PAFE, that the real darkness started to shape his voice.
Philadelphia wasn't some romantic European art city. It was.
Yeah.
It was reality in its most volatile form.
He described the creative community at PEFA as a beautiful time with great painters inspiring each other. But the city itself, he said, was his most important teacher.
He described the atmosphere so vividly. Factories, smoke, railroads, diners, the strangest characters, and the darkest night.
The complete opposite of that picket fence world he grew up in. And at the same time, he's absorbing the work of the Irish painter Francis Bacon.
Bacon's work is so intense, psychological, disturbing, with those distorted portraits.
And that influence just merged perfectly with the city's own dangerous environment. The sources really stress how terrifying his home life was there.
He and his family bought this huge 12-room house in Fairmount for just $3,500.
A price that tells you everything you need to know about the crime and poverty in that neighborhood.
The fear was constant. They were robbed twice.
Their car was stolen. They had windows shot out. He said they were broken into just 3 days after moving in.
And Lynch was explicit about the impact this had on him. He said, and this is a direct quote, that the atmosphere of Philadelphia was the biggest influence in my whole life.
That feeling of persistent threat, the anxiety, the raw fear, it became the absolute foundation for his entire artistic framework. It taught him that the world is just inherently dangerous.
And that terrifying mood translated directly into his first films. He wanted to see his paintings move.
So at PFA, he made Six Men Getting Sick 6 times in 1967. It cost him $150.
The sources describe it in these really visceral terms. 57 seconds of growth and fire and 3 seconds of vomit.
It was an animation projected onto a sculpted screen, just looping at the Academy's annual exhibit. And it actually shared first prize.
The crudeness, the subject matter. You can already see a signature style forming.
Then came The Alphabet in 1968. He used leftover money from another commission for that one.
And it mixed his stop-motion animation with live action, right? Based on a really disturbing story.
Yeah, his wife Peggy's niece was having a nightmare and was chanting the alphabet in this tormented way.
So the short film features Peggy as the girl, chanting before she starts hemorrhaging blood all over her bedsheets.
And what's amazing, even at this early stage, is his focus on sound design. He used a broken Osher tape recorder to deliberately distort the sound of his own daughter, Jennifer, crying.
Which created this haunting, mechanical soundscape that just amplified the whole unsettling mood.
From there, he got an AFI grant for The Grandmother in 1970. This one was mostly live action.
About a neglected boy who, in a desperate attempt to find some kind of love, literally grows a grandmother from a seed.
Right. And critics look back at that film as a crucible. It already has the core themes: isolated characters, distorted family life, the search for comfort in a hostile world, all the stuff that would define his later work.
So after that, he moves to Los Angeles and starts at the AFI Conservatory. And he loved it there, but not for the reasons you'd think.
No, he said the place was completely chaotic and disorganized, which was great.
That lack of structure gave him the freedom he wanted, especially after a previous project, Gardenback, was, in his words, wrecked by outside interference.
And this is the environment that leads him to start working on Eraserhead in 1972. It was supposed to be a short, controlled project, planned for 42 minutes.
But it ended up being 89 minutes long. He used a script that was only 21 pages, thinking if it was small enough, no one could derail it.
The production of Eraserhead is just legendary. It's essential to understanding the final film. It was filmed haphazardly over 5 years.
Constantly stopping and starting because of money problems.
The sources say Lynch had to get a loan from his father. He even took a job delivering the Wall Street Journal in the early mornings just to pay for film stock and rent.
And he was living on the set.
Right.
In these abandoned stables where they were filming.
Full time. And that drawn-out, low-budget necessity is what created the film's look. The deliberate slowness, the claustrophobic sets, the deep, grainy black and white. It was all born of necessity, but became these defining artistic choices.
The final film, released in 1977, is this uncompromising vision of Henry Spencer, played by Jack Nance, and his grotesque, deformed baby, all set in a polluted industrial nightmare.
It's his Philadelphia movie, his cinematic exorcism of that city, directly reflecting the mood of despair he felt there. The soundscape, that constant low hum, the clanking, the steam. It's the sonic embodiment of that urban dread.
And it was rejected by the mainstream at first, but it quickly became this foundational midnight movie.
It cemented its status as one of the most important underground films of the 70s. And famously, Stanley Kubrick loved it, watched it over and over, called it one of his favorite films of all time.
And that notoriety, plus Kubrick's endorsement, led to this massive, completely unexpected career shift.
Mel Brooks's executive producer, Stuart Kornfeld, saw it and was, quote, 100% blown away. Brooks watched it himself, called Lynch a madman, and hired him on the spot.
Which led to The Elephant Man in 1980, the biographical drama about Joseph Merrick.
And this showed Lynch could handle a conventional story, could handle pathos. It was a huge critical and commercial success. It got 8 Academy Award nominations, including Best Director.
And it's important to mark this film, because even with its surreal dream sequences and that atmospheric black and white, critics still call it one of his most conventional films.
It proved he could use his unique voice within the Hollywood system, that he could play by the rules and win.
But that success led to another critical choice. George Lucas offered him the chance to direct Return of the Jedi.
And he turned it down. The sources suggest it was a conscious decision to protect his own artistic freedom. He felt the Star Wars saga belonged to its creator, a freedom he was about to lose control of himself.
Right, because instead he chose another huge sci-fi epic, the adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune in 1984 for De Laurentiis Entertainment Group.
And this became the textbook example of studio compromise gone wrong for Lynch.
The sources show he was contractually obligated to make 2 more films for the company after Dune, which gave them enormous leverage.
On Dune, he lost final cut. He later said he felt he was subconsciously making compromises the whole time. The studio cut his footage to ribbons, just mangled a really complex plot.
It was a disaster, critically and commercially. It cost $45 million and only grossed about $27 million domestically.
His frustration was so immense that when an extended cut was made for TV later, without his approval, he had his name taken off it. The director's credit went to the pseudonym Alan Smithee.
And he even used another pseudonym, Judas Booth, for the screenwriter credit.
That tells you everything about how betrayed he felt. It was a huge act of symbolic protest about artistic control.
But even after the catastrophe of Dune, that contract was still there. He had to deliver another film for De Laurentiis,
which forced him back to a more personal, lower-budget vision, and that film was Blue Velvet.
In 1986. And Blue Velvet is arguably the film that really crystallized the Lynchian aesthetic for a mass audience.
It's set in this deceptively calm town, Lumberton, North Carolina. It follows a college student, Jeffrey Beaumont, played by Kyle MacLachlan, after he finds a severed human ear in a field.
Which is the ultimate violation of that pristine suburban lawn.
And this discovery pulls him into this terrifying underworld with the sadistic psychopath Frank Booth, played by Dennis Hopper,
right,
and the vulnerable, tormented singer Dorothy Valens, played by Isabella Rossellini.
And the film does not shy away from the horror of that world. The sources detail Dorothy's story as one of repeated sexual assault and degradation.
It is essential to approach this with the sympathy the sources direct toward the victim. The material highlights Isabella Rossellini's courage in portraying a character who is so relentlessly humiliated and exploited.
Lynch said the whole idea for the film came from the juxtaposition of the song Blue Velvet and its association with, clean American lawns. He called it a dream of strange desires wrapped inside a mystery story.
And it was a success. Critically and commercially, it earned Lynch his 2nd Oscar nomination for Best Director, and this is when the critics really had to figure out how to define him.
This is where that famous Pauline Kael quote comes from. She called him a genius, naif, and the first populist surrealist, a Frank Capra of dream logic. Let's unpack that. How did the sources say he blended Frank Capra's American optimism with, Kafka's existential dread?
The Capra part comes from the setting. Capra's films celebrate small-town America, decency, simple values. Lynch uses that exact same template, the friendly cop, the nice neighbors, the clean town.
And the populism is in the genre. It's a detective story, a romance, things people recognize.
Exactly. But the surrealism, the Kafkaesque dread that arrives when Jeffrey, the protagonist, looks under the surface and finds that the idealized reality is just a thin cover for utter depravity.
The horror is contained within the mundane. It's always been there.
Which makes it accessible, but also deeply disturbing. And that perfectly fits Kael's definition of a populist surrealist.
So by the end of the 80s, he's established as this major cultural source, which leads directly to his collaboration with Mark Frost and, a phenomenon that completely changed television.
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks. The idea started so simply, just a conversation over coffee where they imagined a corpse washing up on a shore.
And that evolved into the central mystery: who killed Laura Palmer, the high school homecoming queen, played by Sheryl Lee in this quirky, fictional town in Washington.
And the show mixed the police investigation, led by FBI Special Agent Dale Cooper.
Kyle MacLachlan again in that iconic role.
with the deeply strange, melodramatic lives of the town's residents. It was an instant hit. It defined what a cult following could be and proved that complex, often nonsensical art could work on network television.
Lynch directed the pilot and was very hands-on with choosing the other directors. He even had a recurring role himself as the hard-of-hearing FBI agent Gordon Cole.
But the success was complicated. The network ABC got involved.
Which led to what Lynch called one of his biggest professional regrets. ABC insisted they reveal the killer's identity.
And he reluctantly agreed midway through the second season. Once that central mystery was solved, the show it lost its narrative drive.
Ratings dropped, it got canceled, and it ended on that famous cliffhanger, which Lynch always insisted was not the ending he intended for the story.
But even with that messy conclusion, 1990 was his annus mirabilis, his miraculous year. Because alongside Twin Peaks, he released the film Wild at Heart.
Right. Based on the Barry Gifford novel, it was this violent road trip crime story with Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern.
And it was just a mashup of genres. The sources describe it as a strange blend of a love story, a psychological drama, and a violent comedy.
Saturated with these visual references to The Wizard of Oz, especially The Wicked Witch.
And the reception was completely divided. It had a pretty muted response in the U.S.
But internationally, it won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which was also controversial. The sources mentioned that its graphic violence meant the win was met with audible boos from some in the audience.
It just confirmed his status as an artist who creates these extreme polarized reactions.
And after the TV series was canceled, Lynch felt he had to go back to the story to finish it his way, so he made the film prequel, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, in 1992.
This was a deliberate and major tonal shift. It was so much darker, so much grittier than the series. It stripped away all the quirky humor.
And focused explicitly on the final, tragic 7 days of Laura Palmer's life. It dealt directly and unflinchingly with the trauma of incest and murder.
Lynch was very clear about the film's purpose. He said it was about the loneliness, shame, guilt, confusion, and devastation of the victim of incest.
The sources really emphasized that for Lynch, this film was necessary. He had to restore the victim's narrative, which the demands of network TV just couldn't fully explore.
And it was a commercial and critical failure at first. A lot of fans found it just too dark, too disturbing.
But it's gone through this huge critical reappraisal over the years. Some critics now call it his true masterpiece.
After that intense period, he explored fractured identity again in Lost Highway in 1997, a nonlinear neo-noir film.
And Lost Highway is a really critical step in his move toward nonlinear, fragmented storytelling. It sets the stage for everything he did in the 2000s. The narrative, with Fred Madison and the Dick Laurent mystery, is built like a Mobius strip, where identities just fold into each other.
And the sound design in that one is so important. The sources highlight how overwhelming and aggressive the sound is, acting as this cue that reality itself is breaking down.
It's all part of that texture.
Then, just 2 years later, he makes this impossibly sharp turn with the straight story in 1999. On the surface, it seemed to reject everything he'd stood for.
It's a road movie, based on a true story, about an elderly man in Iowa, Alvin Street, who rides a lawnmower 300 miles to visit his sick, estranged brother.
The contrast with the fragmented violence of Lost Highway was just stunning.
The most famous detail is that it has no profanity, no sex, no violence. It got a G rating from the MPAA, his only G-rated film.
The industry was shocked.
But even with that wholesome surface, critics saw it was entirely his film, a surreal road movie, about these profound themes of forgiveness and healing. It used the quiet dignity of the Midwest, but with Lynch's deep sense of place and quiet contemplation.
It was so unique that Walt Disney Pictures released it in the U.S. The New York Times called it one of the year's best films. It just showed the incredible range of his cinematic voice.
Absolutely.
The new millennium then wrought what are arguably his most celebrated works. He fully solidified his relationship with these fragmented, dream-logic narratives. And at the top of that list is Mulholland Drive.
2001, an iconic film with just incredibly chaotic beginnings.
It started as a TV pilot for ABC. A network that, their sensibility often clashed with his.
To put it mildly. And when the pilot was rejected, Lynch got another $7 million from Studio Canal. That allowed him to shoot new footage and rework the whole thing into a nonlinear, surrealist feature film.
The film, with Naomi Watts, Laura Herring, and Justin Theroux, was a critical juggernaut. It explores the toxic ambition, the identity crisis, and the profound loss behind the Hollywood facade.
He won Best Director at Cannes, sharing the award, and got his third Oscar nomination for Best Director.
And its influence has lasted. In 2016, a big BBC poll of international film critics named it the best film of the entire 21st century.
The sources suggest its success is in its structure. It's a film that challenges you to move beyond linear storytelling, inviting you into a world where reality and fantasy are just perpetually fractured and shifting.
And this era also marked his embrace of new technology. He was always keen on maintaining control, so he embraced the internet, launching his website, davidlynch.com, in 2001.
And he immediately used it as a distribution channel, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers. He put out the intentionally crude, absurdly violent animated series Dumbland in 2002.
And the bizarre sitcom Rabbits.
Right. With the humanoid rabbits in a claustrophobic room, it explored existential dread and fragmented language. Then he did a short horror film called Darkened Room. He was willing to use this low-res digital media for raw, unpolished art, which was a sharp contrast to his high-gloss 35mm work.
And this digital aesthetic all culminated in Inland Empire in 2006. It's his longest film, at 3 hours, and it aggressively avoids traditional narrative. And crucially, it was shot entirely on early digital video.
The change in medium was a huge artistic choice. The sources note that switching from lush, high-res 35mm film to low-res DV created this deliberately degraded, rough, immediate look.
And that visual roughness mirrored the film's subject. An actress caught in a dissolving, volatile reality. Lynch himself just described it as a mystery about a woman in trouble.
And the promotional tour for it was pure Lynch. He made appearances with a live cow and a placard that said, "Without cheese, there would be no Inland Empire."
A classic piece of Lynchian absurdity.
The gesture itself is perfect. It takes something mundane, cheese, dairy, Americana, and elevates it to cosmic importance. It's exactly what he does in his art, finding depravity in the commonplace. It emphasizes that art should be felt, not just logically analyzed.
Then, in the later 2010s, we get his celebrated return to television with Twin Peaks, the return in 2017.
Initially planned for 9 episodes, but the scope of his vision expanded it to 18 on Showtime, and he directed every single episode.
It was a defining moment for late-career television. It pushed the medium way beyond its normal limits.
The sources point out that the return was deliberately obscure, paced, agonizingly slow. There were entire scenes with minutes of no dialogue, no narrative movement. It was a complete rejection of closure, which frustrated some viewers but thrilled critics who saw it as pure, unadulterated cinema.
The sources also talk about the confusion over his retirement status during the press for that revival.
Right. He initially suggested he'd made his last feature film, citing how hard it was to get complex, original films made with current box office trends.
But he later clarified that. He said he hadn't quit cinema, just that nobody knows what the future holds. He was always working, just shifting his focus, whether it was to TV or his visual art.
Exactly.
And it's so important to remember that Lynch started as a painter. He always saw himself as a visual artist first, and film was just a moving canvas for him.
His visual art mirrors his film themes of violence and decay. He called his paintings organic, violent comedies and wanted them to look primitive and crude.
He famously preferred dark colors and heavily textured surfaces. He said, "Color to me is too real. It's limiting. It doesn't allow too much of a dream."
He felt that black and muted tones had a depth that forced your mind to fill in the blanks, to project your own fears and desires onto the image.
Which connects right back to his use of stark black and white in Eraserhead and The Elephant Man. It's a consistent aesthetic across all his mediums.
And his primary painting influence was Francis Bacon, who he called his #1 kind of hero painter. He loved Bacon's ability to disturb and distort the human form.
The sources also highlight how his paintings often incorporate words and letters, which he found visually exciting, lined up like teeth on the canvas.
And it often introduces this jarring, absurd humor into these otherwise menacing visual spaces.
And beyond painting, his involvement in music and sound design is just integral to the Lynchian world. He worked with collaborators like Alan Splett and the composer Angelo Badalamenti.
And sound is never secondary in his films. It's a character itself. Those low hums, the mechanical clanking, the distorted voices, they're all designed to create psychological unease.
His collaboration with Badalamenti was legendary, producing the iconic, haunting melodies of Twin Peaks.
But Lynch was also deeply involved himself. He produced albums for the singer Julie Cruz, whose dreamy voice was often this calm counterpoint to the on-screen chaos.
He released solo albums too, like Crazy Clown Time in 2011, which he called an electronic blues album. And his final musical project was Cellophane Memories with Christabel in 2024.
The sources even detail his unique guitar style. On his 2001 album Blue Bob, he apparently played the guitar upside down and backwards.
Which just underlines his chaotic, intuitive approach to everything.
His creativity also extended to design and literature. He custom designed and built furniture for the set of Lost Highway.
And he later designed the Parisian private members club Silencio, directly inspired by the mysterious club in Mulholland Drive.
In terms of writing, he published the memoir Room to Dream in 2018. But his most significant philosophical book was Catching the Big Fish in 2006.
This book introduced his central metaphor for the creative process, linking it directly to his spiritual life.
Right. The ideas are like fish metaphor. If you want to catch little fish, you can stay in the shallow water. But if you want to catch the big fish, you've got to go deeper.
He explained that in the deep, silent waters of consciousness, the ideas, the fish, are pure and abstract and beautiful.
And that metaphor is key. The sources suggest it translates directly into his nonlinear filmmaking. The abstract big fish are the raw ideas, the feelings, the dreams, which he then translates into films like Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive.
The chaos on the surface is just the result of translating something pure and abstract into something concrete and fragmented.
In his final years, he also maintained this unique and really beloved web presence. In 2020, he revived his daily weather reports from his LA apartment.
They were brief, serene, and sometimes deeply strange. He also continued his other digital series, like What is David Lynch working on today? And Today's Number Is, where he just pick a random number from a jar.
The sources mention one weather report where he just calmly detailed a dream he had about being a German soldier shot on D-Day.
Perfectly merging the mundane weather update with cosmic trauma.
And his connection to Americana wasn't just on screen. It extended to commercial ventures, like his David Lynch signature cup coffee line.
And the tagline was a line from Inland Empire. It's all in the beans, and I'm just full of beans. He found ways to integrate his world into every single facet of his life.
He really did.
And the absolute foundation of his creative process, and his personal life, really since the early 70s, was transcendental meditation, or TM.
He was initiated in 1973 and practiced with remarkable consistency. The sources say he never missed a session since he started.
His advocacy for it was profound. In 2005, he founded the David Lynch Foundation to fund TM lessons for at-risk populations.
Yeah, military veterans with PTSD, inner-city school children. He promoted it on college campuses through his books. He believed it was the key to unlocking true creativity and peace.
And his ambition for what TM could do for the world was just staggering.
He had this goal, though it was unfulfilled, to build 7 buildings worldwide where 8,000 salaried people would practice advanced meditation techniques dedicated to pumping peace for the world.
He estimated the cost at $7 billion.
His book, Catching the Big Fish, is basically an explainer for how accessing deeper consciousness through TM fuels his creative process. For him, art and meditation were intrinsically linked.
Now, shifting to his political views, he often said he was not a political person. He argued politics required a type of logic he just didn't have.
But the sources document a very nuanced, sometimes contradictory voting history that's hard to categorize.
He described himself as leaning libertarian at one point. But his voting record was all over the place. He voted for Reagan in '84, endorsed the Natural Law Party in 2000.
Then voted for Obama in 2012, endorsed Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary, but then voted for the libertarian Gary Johnson in the general election.
And then, of course, we have to address the controversial 2018 quote he made about Donald Trump.
Right, suggesting Trump might go down as one of the greatest presidents in history because he had disrupted the country so much.
And that statement got a lot of attention, especially since Trump read it aloud at a rally. It's essential we contextualize this impartially, just as the sources do.
Lynch himself clarified it later on Facebook, saying his words were taken out of context. The sources imply he was commenting on Trump as a disruptive force, a theme that aligns with the chaos in his own art, not endorsing his policies.
Right. He made clear that Trump would not have a chance to go down in history as a great president if he kept causing suffering and division.
So we're just reporting the trajectory of those statements, emphasizing his clarification, which separated his artistic observation of chaos from an endorsement of the political actions that resulted.
And his final years were marked by pretty significant health struggles. He was a lifelong smoker since he was 8 years old. In 2020, he was diagnosed with emphysema.
He did finally quit smoking in 2022, but by 2024, the sources describe a real decline in his health. He was reliant on supplemental oxygen, struggled with mobility, and was largely housebound.
which limited his ability to direct in person. During that time, a long-planned Netflix project known as Wisteria or Unrecorded Night fell through.
But he insisted right up to the end that he hadn't retired. He still hoped to make unrealized projects like Antelope Don't Run No More and Snoot World.
His final moments came very abruptly in January 2025. He was evacuated from his LA home because of the Southern California wildfires.
A traumatic event that preceded a very rapid decline. He died on January 15th, 2025 at 78 while staying at his daughter's home.
The immediate cause was cardiac arrest, with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and dehydration listed as contributing factors.
And his family released a final quote from him that was just so perfectly Lynch. Positive, yet surreal. Keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole.
Tributes poured in from his key collaborators, Kyle MacLachlan, Naomi Watts, Nicolas Cage, and fellow directors like Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, who called him a visionary.
And MacLachlan later accepted the posthumous Laurel Award for screenwriting on Lynch's behalf, recognizing him as the great American surrealist.
So now that we've charted his life and career, we can try to formally define that singular aesthetic, the Lynchian, with the precision the sources offer.
David Foster Wallace, who's cited extensively in the material, probably gave one of the most comprehensive definitions.
Wallace said the term refers to a particular kind of irony where the very macabre and the very mundane combine in such a way as to reveal the former's perpetual containment within the latter.
It's that unsettling, almost absurd discovery that depravity is always lurking right beneath the unthreatening surface. It's the red ants under the cherry tree.
His style blends this abstract surrealism with a pulpy romanticism from B-movies and classic Hollywood.
It creates this constant, dreamlike quality of mystery or menace. He used experimental techniques and pure dream logic right alongside commercial genres like film noir, horror, and soap opera.
And you can see that duality in the way critics suggested his art synthesized Frank Capra's American optimism with Franz Kafka's existential dread.
The optimism of the setting combined with the dread of the inescapable, distorted reality.
And certain motifs appear over and over, like a symbolic vocabulary, the red theater curtains,
which signal a transition between reality and the stage of consciousness. There are classic American diners, dreams within dreams, enigmatic nightclub singers,
flickering electricity or stages, and this pervasive industrial imagery, pistons, screaming wood mills, smoke,
reflecting that lingering dread of Philadelphia.
The thematic core is always duality. The sources consistently highlight this tension. His work juxtaposes the folksiness of small-town America, the coffee and pie of Twin Peaks,
with the utter depravity that's living right next door.
And his Hollywood trilogy Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, Inland Empire contrasts the celluloid dreams of fame with the cosmic horrors lurking in the hills of L.A.,
suggesting that the pursuit of the dream inevitably leads to self-destruction or fragmentation.
And this duality manifests most powerfully in the instability of the self. His stories often deal with a trauma that ruptures a character's world, forcing them into these fractured, nonlinear realities.
He frequently features female leads in split or fractured roles. Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive is the prime example. It shows the volatility of identity when it's faced with profound pain or cruelty.
And the sources connect his artistic philosophy right back to his spiritual practice, describing his aesthetic as a marriage between Western kitsch and Eastern spirituality.
His philosophy, derived from his TM practice, suggests the soul is trapped in illusions of separateness and violence until it awakens to a unified reality.
And he makes that link explicit in his films and in live introductions when he'd quote the Upanishads.
We are like the spider. We weave our life and then move along in it. We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives in the dream. This is true for the entire universe.
That framing suggests that the absurdity and fragmentation in his movies are just a consequence of recognizing that our physical reality is itself just a volatile, shared dream.
And despite all the darkness, Lynch genuinely embraced a certain kind of American culture. The 1950s especially. The slick hair, the soda fountains, Roy Orbison.
He found a great feeling of hope in that era, which the sources note served as the idealized background against which he exposed the dark truths. The violence is so shocking because the background is so pristine.
And finally, you can look at who he admired. He often felt his work was more aligned with European cinema: Fellini, Bergman, Hitchcock, Kubrick, Wilder.
And his all-time favorite film, the one he returned to again and again for inspiration, was The Wizard of Oz.
Beyond film, his appreciation for painters included Francis Bacon, as we mentioned, and also Edward Hopper. He specifically cited Hopper's New York movie. These influences show his consistent appreciation for artists who reveal the intense loneliness or surreal tension hidden inside familiar, idealized American settings.
So David Lynch's contribution was really a fundamental paradox. He made experimental, often bizarre art mainstream, and he gave us a necessary vocabulary, the Lynchian, to describe the disturbing truths hidden just beneath the surface of idealized American life.
He was a master at forcing us to look at the red ants under the cherry tree and at making us recognize that they are, in fact, everywhere.
So, considering his lifelong practice of transcendental meditation and his profound belief that the physical world is just a dream, maybe the final question for you to contemplate is this.
If, as Lynch suggests through his art and his philosophy, physical reality is fundamentally unstable and contains this inherent absurdity and horror beneath its surface, how should we fundamentally change our approach to navigating the real world? And what responsibilities does that awareness impose on us?
A profound thought to end our exploration on. Thanks for listening.